told you when something would come to mind at work that maybe would better your guys' lives, that I might create a video on it. So this is a pretty common scenario. People come see their doctors, primary care doctors usually, for depression or anxiety. You know, when you go to medical school, you really don't get trained in dealing with it, other than here's a pill for depression, here's a pill for anxiety, and that's pretty much your training. So I personally, I think we've all had our ups and downs with maybe feeling anxious or having depression or whatever, and you know, I'm similar. There's always something going on with life, but ultimately what I'll try to do, my main objective when I see someone that comes in for depression, anxiety, is to kind of understand why they feel anxious or why they feel depressed, because they'll tell you, if you know, doctors may say, oh, there's clinical depression where there's no reason why you should be depressed, you're just depressed, and usually that's 99.9% most of the time not true. There's always something something that originates from the depression or anxiety. So generally what I like to do is just kind of hear their story and try to understand why they feel that way. Usually we can get to some degree of why they feel that way, and I want to ask those questions, because the next step, what I usually do is tell people, hey, you should see a therapist. And that's where sometimes the problems begin. I think a lot of times they'll get, as a response to, hey, have you ever thought about seeing a therapist, they'll say something like, well, I already have seen a therapist and what didn't help, or no, I don't need that, or no, I just had bad experiences. So the next step, what I'll do is try to almost convince the person why it might be a good idea to consider therapy. And so this is what I'm kind of go through this with you. So basically, if you're searching for, hey, besides yelping and saying, oh, this person's great, like, what are you looking for in a therapist? Like, and I've got like top three reasons what you should be looking for when you're looking for a quote unquote good therapist. So I would say the number one reason, which is not the number one, but it's going to start there, the most simplest one, is that the therapist should be asking tons of questions about your life, the present and the past. I'd say that most of us, our problems from the present usually have to do with our situations in the past. So that's the second reason, after just having the therapist understand kind of like where you came from, so to speak, is to basically, this is my analogy for this, but everyone has their own set of contact lenses or glasses, however you want to think of it, and these glasses were given to you by your parents, and the tint of the glass just depends on what you experienced as a young child. And so you, as the adult, you don't know that you're looking through the world through a prism of the color that these glasses hold. So your perspective of what a situation is, your read on it, could be completely different depending upon where you came from. And a good therapist will essentially kind of give you the origins of why you think the way you do, literally showing you, hey, you've been looking through the color of green your whole life, and this is why maybe you perceive the world to be a certain way, and this is why maybe you're unhappy, or why you're depressed, or why you're anxious, or whatever the emotion is. But I think it's such a value to have the therapist share this with you, and to be for the therapist to be good enough to be able to perceive your story, take your story, and then give you the knowledge that you're looking through it through a different lens, and you're looking through it through a non-clear lens, and this is why maybe you feel so unhappy. The next step of a good therapist, I guess number 3, which is probably the most important, is that the therapist, the next step is they're going to be essentially giving you the tools on how to change your thinking. I kind of give this as an analogy. Let's pretend you have you got a golf swing and you've been practicing by yourself for 10 years and you're self-taught and you stink at it, and a golf coach comes to you and says, hey, your golf swing's terrible, but hey, I can help you, he might say. And so he takes your swing and he looks at it and he makes changes, and he's literally changing the patterns of your neuromuscular connection between the brain and the muscles. And that's an adaptive change, and that takes a lot of practice to remove the old pattern and recondition the new pattern into the golf swing. And so I take that same analogy and I say, that's what a good therapist is doing. They're saying, hey, you are always thinking in this one direction, and it's so automatic, you could do it with your eyes closed, chewing gum, however that works. And you don't need to think about it. This is a default way of thinking. Well, a good therapist is going to give you the tools to change through practice, changing the way your brain's wired. Think of it like, if it's a golf swing, it's going to be a nerve that goes to your muscle that makes a movement. For a thought, it's just nerves over nerves over nerves. And so with practice, you can literally completely change the nerve connection, and adjust your thinking to where thinking negative is not going to be something you default to, or that when you are thinking negative, that you're quick to correct and to see where your mind's going and move to a different direction. These are like vital tools, and I always I'll tell a patient, I'll say, like, your car has a owner's manual, and it can tell you maintenance schedules, it can tell you where things are in the vehicle, you know everything about the vehicle. And yet we don't have owner's manuals, and the problem is that we don't understand that. We really think that we have a really good perception of who we are and why we are the way we are, and it's so far from the truth. We have very little insight, but we have less insight than we think, and then we become overly confident in our approach to things that go on. And so, it's made a huge impact in my life. I've done therapy on and off with my wife, and sometimes I myself too, and I've gone through some therapists that were bad, and I felt like it was cathartic to kind of get stuff off my shoulder, but it wasn't functionally helping. And I think all we want help, and that's what we're looking for. So hey, I would honestly, even if there's not a problem, I'd recommend people go see a therapist. But for sure, when there's a problem, you don't have to ignore it. There's people out there that can help, but that's kind of my suggestions on what are the best things, bullet points, I guess, to look for when you're trying to find a new therapist. And another thing too, if you guys haven't seen it, there's a movie on Netflix. It's called Stutz, S-T-U-T-Z. Jonah Hill basically produced it sounds like, and it's basically he's interviewing his therapist, and he kind of talks about what I'm talking about, that a lot of therapists, all they do is listen. He says that you pay a therapist to listen to your problems, to help you, give you advice, and all they do is listen. And then you have your friends who give you, they hear your problems, and all they're doing is giving you unsolicited advice. So that was his problems with therapy before, and he came upon this guy, and he wanted to share the world what a good therapist does. So if you need more motivation to consider seeing a therapist, maybe check that movie out. But anyway, that was my little talk for today. If you listened last time, appreciate it. I'll try to get some more out. Hope you guys have a good week, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.